Mel, we told you, I mean, look, we weren't lying. We're going to keep you on speed dial, and we appreciate you joining us. Thank you.
Well, I knew I was coming on today, so I wanted to make it the dream scenario for the Bears. You know, incentive to try to do that. But no, seriously, it's a possibility. If you can get that type of deal, you're guaranteed a defensive player, whether it's Anderson or whether it's Carter, and Carter would be the preference for me. But that's a strong possibility. You could work that out where even if you just move from 1 to 4, you could possibly still get Carter without moving with a Houston, because obviously Arizona needs more of an edge guy than an inside guy. So. And even if they did take Carter, you get Anderson. So either way, I don't think you're in bad shape if you're the Chicago Bears. In fact, you're in great shape to be able to get the number 1 player, at least on some boards, with the 4th pick overall.
So just to reiterate, Mel, like you were saying, to be able to trade down twice, to add more draft capital, and to walk away with possibly the best player on your board is the dream scenario.
Yeah, and also a key positional need area for the Bears, something, of course, getting those extra draft choices to help out your franchise quarterback in Justin Fields, whether it's O-line, whether it's skill people. You don't just need 1 defensive lineman, how about 2, and try to use those draft choices wisely. So to me, if you could work that out, and I think right now you have to believe there's going to be an opportunity. Now, you don't want to move down too far, and I think Indianapolis, luckily, desperate for a young quarterback, and Houston as well. Now, what you have to see here is, once the process is over, do they view one quarterback, their QB1, whoever that is, as head and shoulders above the other 2 or significantly ahead of the other 3? And if they do, they're going to go get them. If they feel like, okay, we're Houston, we're okay getting our QB2, then they're not going to move up, because they need help at a lot of places. They can't afford to give up a lot of draft capital. So maybe Houston says, nah, we're okay at 2. We're getting C.J. Stroud, or we're getting Will Levis or Anthony Richardson. We're good with that if Bryce Young goes 1. But if Indy says, hey, I don't want to wait till 4, somebody could even jump into 3 and we could get our 4th quarterback. So we got to do something. So you're hoping that somebody wants their QB1 desperately to get that number 1 pick.
Mel, we know that Jalen Carter's number 1 on your board. What do you say to those that are now mentioning that there is this issue with him or that issue, or what do you say to the folks that have any type of negative thing to say about Jalen Carter?
I'll say they said the same thing about Chris Jones coming out of Mississippi State, and how'd that work out? Yeah. I mean, now he went in the 2nd round. That's when John Dorsey was the GM of the Kansas City Chiefs, and they tried desperately to get Paxton Lynch. Didn't work out. He went to Denver. Think about this, guys. And I said this on the radio before the Super Bowl. Had they gotten Paxton Lynch, Kansas City, and they tried to. Remember, Denver ended up with them, but Kansas City tried to. They would not have gotten Chris Jones because they traded down after they didn't get the trade done. They moved out of the 1st round entirely, out of day 1 entirely, picked on day 2. I think it was pick 37. Next year, they got Patrick Mahomes. Had they had Paxton Lynch, he would have been redshirted. They would have had no interest in Patrick Mahomes. So Mahomes and Chris Jones would not have been achieved had that deal been worked out, which they tried. Sometimes the best deals are deals that don't get consummated, don't get worked out. That was for the Chiefs. Let's face it, where are they without Mahomes and Jones? Give me a break. So that's how close and how fragile and how close you are to being really good, dominant, great, or just being a mediocre team. Decisions like that can make or break. And for the Chiefs, the deal that they tried to make and were disappointed they didn't get done turned out to save that franchise.
I think Paxton Lynch just got cut by his XFL team as well.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So Mel, I know you argue and you disagree sometimes with Todd McShay. When McShay brings up Jalen Carter character issues, do you disagree with that?
Yes, I do, and Todd knows that because we've had our back and forth on that. How do you? What do you? I mean, I'd say what are you talking about? Define what you mean. And again, I don't know. I have heard nothing except good. And it depends on who you talk to. You might talk to it, and sometimes teams will say stuff to drop a player down. We've heard that over the years. I don't get into character. I think that's something, boy, you better be sure. A question of kids' character playing football. I mean, they're out there gutting it out. They're playing through injury. Jalen Carter had 2 injuries this year, knee and ankle in September. He came back and played. Now, this guy came back and played after they'd already won a national title. He could have shut it down. He didn't. He came back and played pretty well. So I think that's a true test of character there, right? Okay? I mean, Nolan Smith, a great defensive player, was already out for the year at linebacker. They didn't know what was going to happen down the road. They already won 1 national title. I got the draft coming up. Why am I going to risk coming off an ankle and knee injury and playing football? Well, he came back and played. So I give him a ton of credit for that.
Mel, trading down, how far is too far where you think that they would jeopardize missing out on a player that could be a generational type regardless of position?
I'd say you don't want to get past 5. Yeah, I mean, because then you're losing a defensive player that you really need up front, and that's where I say if you get the 4, then you're guaranteed it. If you get the 5, you probably, because 3 quarterbacks go, you're still probably okay. But you got to be really careful. Because you don't want, and that depends upon. See, I don't think Will Anderson, guys, is the next Myles Garrett or Von Miller. I've said that over and over again. I don't see the bend. I don't see the explosive first step. I saw guys like Darnell Wright neutralize him this year from Tennessee. Darnell Wright's going to be a first-round pick. He's a good player, but he tried everything imaginable. Nothing worked. Now that could tell you why Darnell Wright's projected to go in the first round. I've been going to Washington at 16, but to me, Will Anderson's maybe a 10-sack-a-year guy, which is fine, which is good. I don't think he's 18 to 20. So I think that how people view him. Jalen Carter is a disruptor inside. I got to believe both those guys will be highly coveted, but you got to decide which one do you value the most.
Nick Caserio today spoke at the Combine. He's running things with the Texans, and he said, look, we're fine with many guys at number 2. That's what he's supposed to say, of course. He would never say, look, I want to go up to number 1. But a lot of people call and say, why would the Texans want to go up 1 spot? How do you, as someone who hasn't mocked them trading up to number 1, how do you answer that question?
Well, they guarantee their QB1. See, people say, well, if you don't go there and somebody else does, you don't get your QB1. So if they say they love Bryce Young, well, they got to go get him at 1, or somebody else like the Colts could jump up there. So if you want your QB, you can't sit at 2 when somebody else is going to jump to 1. So it happened. Remember, if you remember the Trubisky trade, it was 3-2, I believe, correct?
Yeah.
So it was 1 spot. So it didn't work too well, but I mean, that was there was method to the madness because somebody else is going to get that guy. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I think when you look at that move, it's to say, okay, we're getting, if you're Houston, the quarterback we deem the best in this draft. Now, like I said before, if they feel you're splitting hairs here between Young and Stroud and Levis, then they're not moving. They're not moving. But if they feel like, I know Todd thinks Bryce Young is Patrick Mahomes and Steph Curry. He said that. So if somebody out there believes, and I don't believe that, but Todd does, and some other teams have echoed similar things, if the right team thinks he's Steph Curry and Patrick Mahomes, or a smaller Patrick Mahomes and Steph Curry coming in, then you're taking him. You're going up and getting this guy. If he's that good, he's better than the other guys, because you're talking about a 2-time Super Bowl champ and a great NBA scoring machine. So come on. But it depends upon how the teams feel that need a quarterback, and that would be Indy. And the other thing, I think Chris Ballard, to me, when I look at Indy, I think they want a bigger quarterback. That's why I made the 4-2 move, because I think they're going to go up to me and get Stroud or Levis or Richardson. I think they want the big guy. Bryce Young is an outlier. He's 5'10 and a half. I said 195 is the bar for me. Better be that or higher to get the QB1 over Levis. We'll see, but I just think Bryce Young is no slam dunk for me. Put it this way: if you ask me would I trade up for Bryce Young, I'd say no.
What is the rest of the NFL? I mean, the people you talk about, how much concern is there about his size now?
It's a definite concern. I asked people that. I said, if you were picking, and some of the teams I talked to, keep in mind, guys don't have a pick where they need a quarterback. So you're just asking them in general. If you needed a quarterback and you're picking one, would you take Bryce Young? And they say no. And I'm not saying all of them. I had 2 of them say no. And they said no, that we could not get past the size, because it has never happened. I've been doing it 45 years, guys. I went back and checked there's never been a quarterback. When I say this size, I'm not talking about the height. I'm talking about the totality of size, height, weight, right? The weight. We've never had that before in the first round of the NFL draft.
Mel, what do you say about the rise of Anthony Richardson of late?
He's worthy of being in the discussion in the top 10. I don't see him number 1 overall, but hey, I didn't see Baker Mayfield going ahead of Josh Allen either.
And he shouldn't have.
Yeah, exactly. But that sometimes things happen. I never eliminate anything from the equation that you hear at this time, because Anthony Richardson, after the Utah game, first game of the season, September 3rd, looked like he could be the number 1 pick overall. I mean, he was fun. The next week, though, he's at 40%, couple picks. Only 4 rushing yards after he went for 106 rushing yards and was at 70%. And at 106 rushing yards, like I said, that first game against Utah when he led them to an upset victory. But the inconsistency throwing the football, the inaccuracies, even on layups, bother me. And I said today, I'd go to Josh. I'd say, Josh Allen, who are your guys that helped you get better from an accuracy standpoint? Who are those guys? I want to work with those same guys. That's what I would do. If I'm drafting Anthony Richardson, I'm putting them in contact, and I'm going to be out there with them day after day working with those same guys that Josh did.
Yeah, Mel Kiper for another minute. Waddle and Sylvie on ESPN 1000. Mel, if the Bears would choose to trade down a little further from top 5 and play around like around 8 or somewhere like that, what about the 2 offensive linemen, the local kid Pete Skoronski or Paris Johnson Jr.? Are they getting sure things in those 2 guys?
Skoronski is interesting. He's a great player. I mean, he took over Slater. Remember, it was out the COVID year, and he stepped in at left tackle as a freshman, did a great job. He just has those 32 and a half arms. And that's something you don't want in a left tackle, especially a 6'3" and a half left tackle. But has it happened before? Yes. But again, there's an outlier. And Bill Polian always stressed this when we were with Bill up there at ESPN preparing for the draft. Don't draft outliers. He said, you don't do that. Yeah, well, Drew Brees come along as a 6-foot quarterback. Yeah, that's not, but I don't draft outliers. And Bryce Young is an outlier, and certainly Peter Skoronski is as a left tackle outlier. I say this, Skoronski is a guard center. Boy, I'd take him in a second. There's no question. I think you could project him there and great. I think Philadelphia would be an ideal spot because they're looking for a guard. They could move Dickerson to center for Kelsey if he moves on. Had a great career. The other guard is a free agent. So I thought Skoronski more as a guard who could play left tackle in a pinch. I mean, and I think he can maybe even do a really good job at left tackle. But the arm length and the height together makes it a little, I'd say, questionable.
Mel, were there similar concerns about Slater coming out of Northwestern, arm length?
Yeah, not as much as this.
Okay.
This is, like you say, not as much here for Slater. But again, remember when Brad Hopkins came out of Illinois, he had a great career in the NFL. He was 6'3" and change, a little better arm length, but not much. But again, these are outliers. So again, there's not that many. When you look at the history of that position, again, you can catch lightning in a bottle in a lot of spots. But to draft those guys is now with Skoronski, you say, well, why project him 10? Well, he could be a Pro Bowl. He could be Quentin Nelson. He could be Zach Martin. He could be John Hanna. He could be a great guard. His father was a great tackle for the Green Bay Packers. His grandfather, was a great offensive tackle for Lombardi's Packers. He's just all football, blood and guts football. So for me, I want Peter Skoronski on my team, and I think there's a chance he could play left tackle. But as a guard, you would be thinking you're looking at a Pro Bowl caliber performer inside.
What about Johnson? Do you like Johnson?
I think he's talented. He was heavily recruited, high grade coming out. He played guard as a junior in 2021 and left tackle this year. I think his technique needs to be improved. He needs an offensive line coach who will work with him. The talent's there. Somebody's going to take him pretty high. I've been going to Tennessee, who's desperate for an offensive tackle. So I think Paris Johnson Jr., when you mock it like I did, I think Tennessee at 11 would make sense. But he needs a little bit of work. He needs a little bit of coaching. But certainly, like I say, the talent since he came out of high school is in abundance.
And one final thought from me. Tell me, one of the guys I like, and I don't know why, I've seen him play a bunch, and I know you have him at 26 going to the Cowboys, is Dalton Kincaid. How good a football player is this tight end going to be, and who would you compare him to?
Well, I'll tell you what, when you saw him last year, Brant Keithy had been there, and he was catching a lot of passes and doing a heck of a job. And then all of a sudden, this year, Keithy got hurt, and Kincaid stepped in to that role and became a key element to that offense. And he had 16 catches in one game against USC during the regular season. He had 11 catches against Oregon. He had 16 receiving touchdowns the last 2 years. He's a real factor in the red zone. He's got excellent hands. He's got run after the catch ability. Dalton Kincaid, I thought for Dallas, I almost put him to Jacksonville. Jacksonville at 24 would make sense for Trevor Lawrence. Get another tight end in the mix there. Cincinnati, I gave Musgrave and I gave Darnell Washington in New Orleans. That's 4 tight ends in the first. But now Kincaid, once he got an opportunity to be the guy, once Keithy got hurt, they went to him early and often, and he rarely dropped the pass or didn't deliver.
Mel, and finally, the buzz, a lot of people keep saying, hey, the Bears could make a deal early to trade down. Ryan Poles talked about it today. Shefty on this radio station said it. Albert Breer has said it. What are the advantages of making a deal early versus waiting?
Well, you can line up everything properly. You know exactly where you are. If you go say 1 to 2, everybody knows what's set in stone there, and then start your evaluations based on that. There's no mystery as to who your guy's going to be. I mean, you pretty much identify if you go to a certain spot who we're looking at there, and it'll be one of 2 players, obviously. So if you get the deal, I'd take it. I think there will be opportunities. I do think Indianapolis would be the hot spot. And I'm anxious to see what Seattle and Detroit do, because is Jared Goff their guy? I think he is. But there are some that say, maybe they could get the heir apparent, or maybe Seattle, which I suggested, could get the heir apparent to Geno Smith, and Anthony Richardson needs 2 to 3 years to be developed. What is Las Vegas going to do at 7? They got to make a move as well. Carolina at 9, I had moving up. Those are the teams that really, is Atlanta satisfied with Desmond Ridder? So there's a lot of things going on there. Tennessee's guys, Malik Willis, they got Dobbs, you got Tannehill situation. But I think the teams I talked about in the top 10 are all quarterback teams, which, who that makes the happiest? It's Ryan Poles and Eberflus and the Bears, because, hey, we're sitting at 1 and you want that quarterback, you better, because Houston's going to take 1. So if you want 1, you better come up and get your guy.
All right. So in your next mock for us, Mel, have them trading down like to 2 to 3 and then to 4. Okay.
Hey, whatever you want, guys. I figured I'd make it interesting, because let's face it, they're doing something. And I thought I just wonder what Houston wants. They can talk all they want about, but you're not going to say anything now. You're not going to play your hand this early if you're Houston. But to me, you could still move up to 1 early on and say, hey, we got our guy. But hey, there's no pro days yet. We don't even know what Bryce Young's height, weight is. We don't know what he's going to look. He's going to throw at his pro day. He hasn't even thrown yet. He won't throw to his pro day coming up late in March. So until these pro days are over for these quarterbacks, I'd wait on that until that point and then make a decision on a trade. Plus, you can't do it until middle of March anyway.
You're great, Mel. Thank you for everything.
Thanks, Mel.
Have a great day, guys. Enjoyed it, man. Take care.